Hello, Rob here from the Flanagan Homestead. I'm here to talk about my love-hate relationship with my goats and sheep. I have a specific story that happened here today, or just a few days ago. But anyway, there's a lot of reasons to love your goats. I mean, they're very friendly, they clear your brush. I take mine to the petting zoo. I have dairy breeds that have a Nigerian dwarf that has really good milk that people enjoy. I am not currently milking them because I don't have time for that. But there's a number of reasons to really enjoy your goats as well as your sheep. The sheep are grazing down the pasture, mine and my neighbors, to keep the grass down. And it's turning it into meat, and lamb tastes really good. But we had an incident that happened here just the other day. I'm out working at the Christmas tree farm. My wife's at work, and I get a call from a neighbor and said, "Are you home?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, your sheep are out, and they're up above my house," which up there, he doesn't care. As a matter of fact, he enjoys having them up there clearing his brush and everything else. But he's like, "Do you want me to get them in?" And I said, "Yeah, get them in." And I didn't think anything of it because they're long time ago, they found a hole on the other side, on the fence on the other side of his pasture, and they went up, and they don't have a guard, they don't have things to injure and whatnot. So as long as we get them back in, he kind of enjoys them actually being out over there. So I said, well, okay, get them back in for me. Just get a bucket from the barn, shake some grain, they'll fall you right back in there, and we'll go. And he said, "Yeah, I'll put them in my yard so they can mow my lawn for me." I said, "Great, perfect." So I continue working on my Christmas tree farm, and I've been gone for a couple hours now. And he calls back and he says, "Well, they got out through the barn." And at that point, I've got a little bit of panic mode. I'll show you what happened. They got into this bay of the barn right behind these doors that they shouldn't be in, and if they rattle it enough, this pin eventually comes out and they can get out. What had happened is we have this door right here that pushes open and pulls back with a bungee, but one of these tools fell against it and wedged it enough that they could open it. So I've had this happen a couple years ago where they can get in, and the unfortunate thing is these grain buckets are usually really full. They weren't full the other day, which is a good thing. I got to go get some more grain. But I've had goats come in here and sheep come in here and just gorge themselves on grain, and I actually had one get bloat and die. So that was the first scare, but I was like, that's not going to be too big of a deal because there's not much grain there. But then I thought, if they came out through the barn, let me back up so you can see here. The barn is also our passageway to our garden. And my wife is loving her garden this year, our garden this year. And I thought, oh my goodness, if they pass through my garden, there's going to be nothing left. But if you look over here, they hardly touched anything. They did nip some of the ends of the beans off. And then they walked right up the steps that I made in between the garden. They mowed the tops of the strawberries, but they didn't kill them, and the strawberries are pretty much done for the year anyway. And then they did ravage the cabbage. The sheep love cabbage, but the carrots, a little bit of the beet greens are beat up. The snow peas pretty much left alone. I was amazed they didn't really touch the blueberry bush. They did walk down this through the chives, or in the onions, and go over here because there's more strawberries over there. And they continued up here. I found all their trail poop. They went up the steps, around the house, to the front yard. All the flowers that she has in the front yard, they left alone, and they headed off towards the neighbors. Now, a couple things are a blessing here. There's certainly more than one thing. One of the blessings is the goats and the sheep run together quite often, or kind of in two packs but together. But somehow this morning they had already separated. For instance, I just fed the animals now, and my goats are still hanging out here. They will for a while. For some reason they tend to do that. The sheep, as soon as I did the morning feeding, they're gone. They're out in the pasture. But it must have reversed the other day. The sheep got out, all 10 of the sheep. None of the 9 goats that I have got out, which is a huge blessing, because if you have a garden and even though sheep eat more than goats overall because they're larger, at least because I have Nigerian dwarf goats, if I'd let the 9 goats into the garden and they had a way and there was nobody here protecting it, and there would be nothing left before they left this area. They would have just ravaged this garden. completely. So I'm glad if any animals got out, which I don't want that to happen, I'm glad it was the sheep, because they amazingly did not ravage the garden and completely destroy it. And that brings up another point that I'd recommend. If we have our garden right next to our barn, because we started off years and years ago. We have slope property, not a whole lot of access, so there's only so many places to put stuff. We started with our garden in a really small chicken coop here, and then that chicken coop got a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and then we got goats and sheep. And so now all of a sudden we have our garden literally right outside the door of our barn. And if you're developing new property, a new homestead, I would, if you have the opportunity, have your goat sheep barn somewhere and your garden set up somewhere else, so that on the occasion that the animal does get out, and they do like the barns, they do want to come back to the barn quite often, you're not drawing your animals right to your garden. That's a bad situation. My animals, when they do get out, they do definitely want to be back at night. They feel safe in the barn, and they have learned that they could come down, because I've used to take them out and then run them through the garden, or especially in the winter, they could come down the hill and they can go and push against that gate. That gate is held shut with a bungee cord, so they could push and get out. They could push and get into the pasture and into the barn, but then once they're in, it slams shut and they can't get out the other way. I've not seen them ever get out the other direction, but they can push to get in. So the animals know they can get back in here, but if they come wandering down the steps and they go to that, usually on their way back to the barn, they nibble something. So that's not good. But if you can, keep your goats and sheep away from your garden. And thankfully they didn't get into my raspberries that are coming ripe this time of year. They're magnificent. Well, there it is. Another story of having sheep and goats. At some point in time, they're going to get out. Thanks for joining me on the Flanagan Homestead, where Christmas trees are my business, teaching, including horticulture is my job, and outdoor projects are my passion. Hope to see you again soon. Be blessed, everyone.